Hi everyone, I hope you guys are having an amazing day. Today I learned everything networking related within AWS. So here you can see I have two EC2 instances opened up, and if you haven't been following along, an EC2 instance is essentially just one singular server within AWS's EC2 service. Now, these two instances were spin up by CloudQuest. You can see I actually was able to finish their DIY section. And I just want to go through the concepts that I've learned while doing the lab and then watching some of the videos that CloudQuest provided. So let's get right into it. All right. So back in this page, let me just talk a little bit about how networking works within your services. So whenever you spin up any service within AWS, and AWS provides a lot of services, right? Like let me just go over here to services. You can see there are a lot of services, right? These are just the categories, by the way. But anyways, when you spin up a specific service or resource, all right, it's put into something called a VPC. Now, what the heck is a VPC? Well, VPC is your own isolated private cloud that is built on top of the AWS framework. So no other request, unless configured, of course, can be requesting those resources. All right. So let's say you have a server, like I have a server here, right? Within this IP address, and that is my web server, right? As you can see, it matches. And you can see here that I actually tried to run it on my general network, right? My computer is not part of the AWS VPC that this instance is a part of. And you can see it's not working. And that's because by default, a VPC will not allow any access to anyone except for those resources within that VPC. That's why it's so good, because it's very, very secure. Not only that, though, it's very customizable as well. All right, and we're gonna see that in just a section. In just a second. Additionally, some other important things to note is that when you create a VPC, you will have a range of IP addresses that your VPC will assign to different resources. These VPC IP addresses are made through something called a classless interdomain routing block, or CIDR for short. It simply just specifies the amount of IP addresses that are available within that VPC. All right. Now, if you have a CIDR block of 0.0.0.0/0, you'll allow any IP addresses. All right. Any IP addresses are allowed within that VPC. All right. So now that we know a little bit more about what the heck a VPC is, and we can actually see a VPC in action through here, right? Because it's not allowing my general network or the general internet to access a resource within a VPC. Let's go ahead and figure out how we can configure a VPC to allow internet access, all right? Or to allow broader access outside of that VPC. Okay? So to do that, you can use a service called Internet Gateway. Okay, I should actually say AWS. All right. So here it is. All right. Now, essentially, what an Internet Gateway does is it reroutes your local resource, right? That's in your VPC cloud, to a network in within the AWS general cloud, which is accessible by the general internet. All right. All you need to really know is that it will allow your resources to be accessed by people outside of your VPC. Okay. And this is how it's done. So in order to do that, what we need to do is we need to actually click on the instance that we want to, go ahead and change. I'm just using EC2 for now, but it should be applicable with other services. And then you want to click on the networking tab. All right. We're mainly going to be working within the networking tab and the security tab. Now, when we're in the networking tab, you want to go ahead and click the subnet ID. Now, what the heck is a subnet ID? Essentially, a subnet ID is a portion of that massive range of IP addresses that Amazon VPC created, right? So this VPC made a huge range of IP addresses, all right? And then the subnets are essentially just hold a portion of those VPCs, which are distributed amongst those resources, all right? So if you hit a certain, I would like to say like a limit in terms of your IP address, you're gonna be in that specific subnet ID. You can also create your own subnets if you like, and you can create them as private or public subnet IDs. All right, but all you need to know, essentially, without any of getting into too deep into the details, all you need to know as a developer is that a subnet is just a partition of the VPC IP ranges, okay, or a portion. So we just need to go ahead and click this right over here. We'll be brought to a brand new page. Then you want to go ahead and check mark the the subnet ID, right? You're only gonna have one. And once we're here, now what you want to do is you want to press on route table. Okay, there we go. Now we're at route table. Now, before we even do anything, you need to know what a route table is, all right? Like, I need to explain it to you, right? Because you want to make sure that you understand what you're doing before you actually do it. Essentially, a route table specifies where a network should be directed to, all right? So it has two things in it, all right? It has a destination. This is where the network is routed to within the VPC, right? And then the target, and this is the resource that needs the redirecting, right? So that would be our public facing API, all right? Or network, I should say. Now, to actually do this, we just need to click on the route table over here. There's like a link, all right? And when you click on this, you will be brought to a brand new, um, page. Now over here, go ahead and click on the item again. And now you will be in the routing table. All right, now you're in the routing table. So before, in the previous page, you were in the subnet group. All right, you're in the console for the subnet. Now you're in the routing table for that specific subnet, in which you can specify where networks should be directed to. Now, if we click on routes, this is where we can see our specific networks that we've made, or the rules, you could say. And here you can see that we do have those two things that I talked about. These we don't really have to worry about too much. They're just system informations. But here you can see this is our destination, which is actually a private IP within the VPC, right? Because this is just specifying a specific resource within our VPC, or I should say specific CIDR block, right? And then the target is just local, all right? And this is the resource in which users would make requests to, all right? And then that resource, all right, will be redirected, all right? It will be redirected to that destination, okay? So we can go ahead and just edit routes and then go ahead and add a new route. Now, in this case, we want all of our resources, so we're just going to put 0.0.0.0. So that's 0, because again, as I said, that relates to all IP addresses. In this context, all IP addresses within the VPC. And then for our target, we are going to actually pick internet gateway. So remember how I talked about internet gateway before earlier in this video? Well, this is why we really need it. All right, and just click on the one over here. Because this is a lab environment, I'll already have one. But if you are following along, and you're on your own personal console, you're gonna have to actually search up internet gateway within the services and then do it from there, all right, which is a feature. Now anyways, I have one, so I'm just gonna use that ID. And now, as you can see, we have an internet gateway, which means that anyone from the internet, right, this is our audience, right? So in my case, my Mac computer is going to make a request to that internet gateway. All right. Then the internet gateway is going to go, okay, I got it. and then it's going to make a redirect to this actual VPC because of this rule that I have created. Okay, so then I'm just going to press save changes. We are good to go. All right. And so now, if I go back here, remember it has to be the subnet that your web server belongs to. All right. And now, if I just go ahead and refresh this, boom! As you can see, it works now, and that is because you can see they've actually made like a little diagram here. It's because the internet, in my case, the MacBook, is actually making a request to the internet gateway, because the internet gateway is able to see these requests. Then the internet gateway goes to the router, all right, because of that routing rule that we just specified. Sorry, not that one, this one over here, right? So because of that, the router is going to go, okay, I got your request, and I'm going to now go ahead and forward you to the specific resource that you're asking for, since we allowed any IP address. And since this is a specific IP address, it's just going to allow us to go here. But now you can see we also have a database server, all right? And this is within the same VPC, of course. By default, you're going to already have a default VPC, but you can go ahead and create more. In this case, they're both from the same VPC, so they can, communicate with each other. But anyways, we have a database server here. But now the cool thing about this database server is it's actually on a private subnet. All right, you can see that within the architecture. So this means that the internet cannot directly access this, right? Because we don't want the internet to just access our database, right? That's pretty unsafe, right? Because people can do whatever with our data, right? And there could be hacks, people can leak data, all that, right? We only want our web server to make a request to the database, right? Because then we can actually control what data is shown, all right? So for that, we just made this into a private subnet, so it's only accessible for resources within the VPC, right? In this case, this web server. But by default, you can see here that it's actually trying to make a request to that server. In this case, it's a MySQL server, and it cannot. Why is that, right? Why can't it make the request? Because it's in the same VPC, right? So it should theoretically be able to make a request to the database, no issues, right? Wrong. And that's because we haven't configured the proper security, all right? And we're going to do that right now, though, all right? So back in our database server, let's go to security and then go to security groups, okay? Now within here, you will see I actually do have a security I do have a security group rule here, but let me just explain everything. I actually can go ahead and delete this one. This one was from before, and yeah. So anyways, we are going to be editing the inbound rules, not the outbound rules, the inbound rules. All right. The reason for this is that the inbound rules specify what networks are allowed to request the specific resource. Okay, in this case, this DB server. All right. Now, if you do not have any idea what a security group is, think of it as a virtual firewall. All right. It specifies what networks are allowed within a specific resource. Okay. So with these inbound rules, we're just going to edit what network is allowed to give a request. All right. So we can just press add rule. All right. Now, once we press add rule, we need to go into type, and then within type, we need to actually specify the specific port. All right. Port range, actually, my bad. And within this MySQL database server, it has a specific port, which we can actually reference through the type. All right. And that is 3306. To be honest, I didn't even know. But yeah, you can just pick the different types. There's a lot available. You can add your custom TCP as well, like a TCP protocol if you wanted to, or you can go ahead and use the ones over here, right? Which will go ahead and add the protocol which is appropriate for the type. In my case, it's a database server, but there's also HTTPS and HTTP, which would be like web servers. Anywho, That is good. Okay, so now the security group knows that any database servers that we have within our group, all right, we are gonna specify this rule with them. Because again, a security group can have many different instances or different resources within it. So by adding this type, we're just telling the security group or firewall that, okay, if there is any database servers, specifically MySQL and Aurora, which is just an AWS service, um, if there's any server or resource that matches that type, this rule applies to them. Okay, and then within source, this is where we can specify what network is allowed. So we're gonna go ahead and keep custom, all right, and then within the search bar, we're going to actually specify a security group. So now, if you look over here, you'll see that although the security groups are shared, right, can be shared by different resources, within our specific case, there's two security groups. There's one for the web server and there's one for the database. And this is done on purpose. All right. And this is done so that we can actually add this rule. All right. And essentially what we're doing is we're going to tell this security group, the databases security group, that the web server security group is safe. So you can go ahead and allow any requests coming from that specific security group. All right. And this is how we do it. We just go here and then we just go ahead and go under security group and then press the web server security group. All right. And that's it. So now any instances or resources within this specific security group ID will be allowed access to any database server within the database server security group. In this case, there's only one, but you can have multiple, right? But this way, we're able to secure our server. All right. If we did anywhere IPv4, this would allow anyone access. All right. And we don't want that, right? We only want a specific server or a specific group. In this case, the web server group. This just allows for added security because, again, as I said, you don't want anyone to you don't want everyone to have access to your database because it could be leaked and there could be many things that can go messy. All right. So through security groups, we are able to control the incoming traffic and we're able to specify where this traffic can go. In this case, only to the web server security group. Go ahead and press Save Rules. Now, as you can see, automatically it says connected. All right. And this is because we just allowed it access through the security group. Let me go to edit inbound rules, and let me go ahead and delete this. Let's go ahead and save our changes. Now, if I go ahead and refresh this, it's going to check, make a request. Watch what happens now. All right. As you can see, boom. It does not allow it to access it because we took away that security group, and this security group or this firewall, you can say, is blocking access. All right. So that is the things that I've learned. All right. So I learned about internet gateway, route table, VPC, a subnet, and then also security groups. And we saw all of this in action. All right. So let me just go ahead and add it again because why not? Let's save changes. And then let's go ahead and go back here, refresh this. It's just checking it again. And again, when it's checking it, it's really just making a request to the server. And there you go, we're connected now. All right. So through security groups, we can ensure that only authorized networks or or other security groups are allowed to have access to your resource. In this case, make a request to that resource through the inbound rules. All right. Through the VPC, only instances within those VPCs can communicate with each other. Again, that is if the security groups are configured. All right. But through the internet gateway, we can allow the internet or the broader audience to have access to a specific resource within the VPC or access to all resources if they are public, of course, right? If they are public. If they are private, right, you can configure this within your subnet. All right. If they're private, they won't be able to access it. It will only resources within the VPC will be able to access it, which actually adds, funnily enough, another layer of security for this database. Okay, so that was just a little quick conclusion or like overview of what we did, and I hope you enjoyed this video. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and press exit here. There we go. Let's go ahead and pick this one, collect. There we go, we got a new reward. All right, see you guys.